numbers of issues that need to be researched and documented.
We found through basically very careful research that you could bring a lot of objective data to public officials that would make public policy decision making.
We want to not only just bring data to the table, but we also want to try to highlight potential solutions to problems that regions face.
It may not be a front page news, it may not be a neon sign, but when you can really go back and begin to track the extraordinary changes that it's influenced in our community, it's enormous.
The School of Policy Studies is really pleased to work with Research Atlanta.
Well, I appreciate you allowing me to come and visit with you this morning.
But I think now a large number of people are coming together and realizing it's a very big issue.
Research Atlanta was really an outgrowth of Good Government Atlanta, which was a small civic organization.
We had realized in the civic work we had done at the Crime Commission and in Good Government Atlanta that one of the big problems was no one could agree on what the facts were about problems facing the community.
And that we also found that public officials had a real dearth of information. They were operating on assumptions that were demonstrably wrong, but having been repeated as old wives' tales for so long, they had become truth.
And people would argue endlessly about a particular policy or issue, but would never bother to find out what the truth was, what the facts were. So our idea was that Research Atlanta would become the organization that was completely reliable, non-partisan.
Research Atlanta's mission was to be at the front lines of public policy decision making, primarily in Atlanta and in the region.
And that would provide the groundwork for reasonable decision making.
Mike Trotter and I interviewed the first executive director at the old Hartsfield terminal, which was Sam Williams. And fortunately, Sam accepted the job and did an outstanding job as executive director.
It was very fortunate for us that we found Sam, because Sam was a self-starter. He would tell you today, he arrived and we had no office space, we had no staff.
I was the first employee of Research Atlanta in 1971, and there were a period for a month or two when we didn't have paychecks because we didn't have any money.
All we had was a little money and an idea, and we put it to him to make it all happen, and he did.
But it was a real new idea, and there was a lot of support in the public sector. Senator Paul Coverdale, who was a state senator at that time, was extremely interested in Research Atlanta, started using the materials. The county commissioners and some people in the city hall started looking at material to try to make public policy decisions based on fact rather than just politics. Novel idea in 1971.
Research Atlanta did a study concerning the structure of Atlanta city government that played a role in the decision of the Atlanta Charter Commission, which I chaired, which drafted the first new charter for the city in 100 years.
The first project we worked on dealt with tax disparities between the incorporated and unincorporated portions of Fulton County. Not surprisingly, the taxes were a lot lower in the unincorporated portion of the county. And when efforts were made to consolidate the city or to expand the city limits of any city, it had to be approved by the people who lived in the unincorporated areas being annexed, and they obviously weren't the slightest bit interested because it would have raised their taxes. And we had to document that. The county initially denied that it was a problem, but we successfully demonstrated that it was.
I remember one was a funny story. We were trying to get school testing scores. In those days you couldn't get them. They weren't public information. We found out that you could go over and write the test scores down if you took a notepad with you, but they wouldn't let you copy them. So we asked them if we could copy them ourselves with a camera. And they said yes. And they said, well, can we copy them with a copy machine? They said, well, not with ours. So we got a Xerox machine out of the old offices of Research Atlanta down on Fairley Street opposite the Journal-Constitution, and we wheeled it all the way over to the state capitol, got an extension cord 100 feet long, plugged it in, and sat there and copied testing scores. Those were the days. No such thing as Freedom of Information Act in those times.
Research Atlanta, I think, was one of the foundations of the early progress of Atlanta in terms of blacks and whites being able to come together and begin to be able to discuss the issues with information that was fairly objective.
Today, the challenges are such that when you have a lot or a myriad of opportunities, is how do you pick the ones or twos or threes that you can really have an impact in influencing change of behavior.
As Atlanta's growth has been so phenomenal, we've obviously had more what I would call quality of life problems. And so our research has shifted in a lot of ways to that. And so as I think of the highlights over the past couple of years, they're projects that I don't think we as an organization would have ever taken on before.
When you see the potential of working on these items and the potential and the contributions they can make to improving the quality of life and having a greater and a better community, I think that it drives you. It drives you there.
Our challenge now is to make sure we stay ahead of that curve and to find the issues that are of most importance where we can be impactful.
The decision to align with Georgia State was the best and most effective decision I think Research Atlanta made. Reality is that based on the kind of quality that we expected and the kind of staff we could have afforded would never have gotten us where we needed to be. This way we can still have quality product, slim staff, and yet continue on a rapid road to give the research that this community needs to make strong decisions.
There are a number of issues that Research Atlanta needs to be charged with looking at, some of the questions, but of course to do that, Research Atlanta needs a body of funding that's secure, a body of funding that's stable, a body of funding that enables them to do some long-range planning in terms of some of the studies that ought to be produced.
It's a constant struggle to raise money, and it's a challenge to pick your projects that funders might be interested in versus those that in some cases might really need to be done, but you can't find money for it.
Research Atlanta is not ever going to provide all the needs of the communities, but what it can do is provide those key research-based reports that can stimulate thinking for creative change.
I think that every community, if it doesn't have a Research Atlanta, ought to create one. And so I think it has played a very key role, but there's still a big challenge for it in the future.
It is a biracial, nonpartisan, well-regarded research organization, and when it speaks, people normally accept what we have said and are willing to rely on it.
Because of the leadership of Atlanta's corporate community, Research Atlanta was founded on the premise that unbiased data will help drive good public policy decision-making. We like to provide a panoply of options and solutions for community involvement. So help us make the next 30 years even more successful by reading our studies on our website, suggesting topics for research, attending our forums, and staying involved in your community. Thank you very much for your support of Research Atlanta.